In the bustling city of Los Angeles, renowned fashion designer Michael Sterling was celebrated for his unparalleled talent and notorious arrogance. A tall, imposing man of European descent, Michael had ascended to the pinnacle of the fashion world through his limitless creativity and keen critical eye. He was engaged to Victoria Hayes, a strikingly beautiful and equally haughty woman known for her icy demeanor. Together, they were the quintessential couple gracing the glossy pages of magazines, but their relationship was far from ideal. 2 weeks before the industry's most anticipated fashion event of the year, Michael had poured every ounce of his energy into crafting a collection poised to dazzle the world. One fateful night, while fine-tuning the final details, he discovered something catastrophic. His sketches, the result of months of relentless work, had vanished. Panic consumed him as he realized his designs had likely fallen into the hands of his fiercest competitor. With his career and reputation on the line, Michael desperately tried to create new designs, but his mind was an impenetrable blank. Night after sleepless night, he toiled in his office, furiously discarding crumpled pages as his frustration mounted. During one of these nights, as he sat in a haze of exhaustion and despair, he noticed a young Latina janitor entering his workspace, dressed in a plain uniform. Her presence irked him. How could she dare to disturb him in such a critical moment? "Get out of here! Don't interrupt me in my office," he barked. "Sorry, sir," she replied softly, her tone humble yet kind. "I didn't mean to bother you. I can come back later when it's empty." Michael grumbled loudly, lamenting his lack of inspiration, never expecting a response from her. But the young woman surprised him. With an almost poetic serenity, she said, "A clean, organized space, with the scent of fresh coffee and a few sunflowers to brighten the room. That might inspire you. Perhaps opening the curtains to let the sunlight in would help, too." Her words startled him. There was something inexplicably intriguing about her. "Where are you from?" he asked, curiosity creeping into his voice. "I'm from Oaxaca, Mexico," she answered with a warm smile. "Just another immigrant," Michael muttered dismissively. The young woman responded with calm wisdom. "Humans are born free and adaptable, able to thrive anywhere nature allows. But man-made laws create unnecessary chains, legal shackles for free souls." Michael was left speechless by her profound reply, though his pride wouldn't let him show it. As she exited the room, he returned to his work, yet the echo of her words lingered. Later that night, as he made his way out of the building, he noticed the janitor again. This time, she wasn't in her uniform. Instead, she wore a dress so uniquely designed it stopped him in his tracks. The fabric was unremarkable, but the cuts and style were impeccable. Something about it stirred his imagination. "Wait," he called after her, rushing to catch up. "I need to ask you something." The young woman paused, surprised that the company's notoriously unapproachable owner was addressing her. "Your dress? It's not an ordinary design. The fabric is subpar, but the craftsmanship is extraordinary. Where did you get it? Some discount store? Or did you steal it from some obscure boutique?" he questioned brusquely. The woman remained composed. "Sir, with all due respect, you haven't even asked my name." "Fine," Michael snapped, impatient. "What's your name? Not that it matters much." "I'm Elena Martinez," she replied calmly, her expression unshaken. "All right, Elena," he said, still skeptical. "Where's the dress from?" Elena explained. "One night, under the stars in my small room, I sketched this dress with colored pencils. Once I had saved enough money by skipping a few meals, I bought the cheapest fabric I could find and made it myself. I have an old sewing machine, a second-hand model that wobbles when it runs. It's not meant for heavy fabrics, but it lets me bring my small dreams to life. I grew up around patterns and stitches. My mother, may she rest in peace, was a seamstress back in Mexico. She earned very little, but she managed to raise me on her own." Michael stared at her in astonishment, his face reddening with shame at his earlier arrogance. "You designed this? You're the seamstress?" "I'm just someone who loves fabrics and colors," Elena replied humbly. Michael was overwhelmed, his arrogance crumbling. "Do you have more sketches like this?" he asked, his voice subdued. "I have hundreds of drawings," she admitted shyly. "Then it's settled," he said decisively. "We'll go to your place, gather your sketches and tools, and you'll come to my home for 2 weeks. No questions. This is an order." Elena hesitated but nodded, surprised by his intensity. They left together in his sleek car, the silence between them heavy with unspoken questions. By the time they reached Michael's sprawling mansion, a connection had begun to form. "Follow me to the studio," he instructed, motioning to his team to set up a guest room for Elena. Once inside his opulent workspace, he turned to her with a cup of coffee in hand. "Elena, I'm in trouble," he began. "The sketches for my upcoming collection have been stolen. I suspect corporate espionage. I have 2 weeks to create an entirely new line, and I can't trust anyone here. I need your help." Elena regarded him with a mix of surprise and sympathy. "Of course I'll help, but I'm not doing this for money," she said firmly. "What happened to you is unjust, and I want to help because it's the right thing to do." Her response stunned Michael. Her humility and wisdom were a sharp contrast to his world of cutthroat ambition. "The money isn't what matters, Mr. Sterling," she added. "What people need most is understanding, loyalty, and support." For the first time, Michael felt an inkling of respect for someone outside his circle of influence. "You're right," he admitted. "I'd like to see your sketches." Elena opened her notebook, revealing pages filled with vibrant, intricate designs. Michael's eyes lit up as he flipped through them. "This one needs silk, the finest kind, and this, perfect for Italian linen, and this, magnificent for an evening gown in velvet," he murmured, captivated. Elena smiled, encouraged by his enthusiasm. "If you trust me, I can create the patterns and sew each piece," she suggested. To her surprise, Michael confessed, "I know how to sew, too." "My father was a tailor. I've never told anyone that." That night, they dove into the work together, choosing fabrics and planning every detail. For the first time in years, Michael found himself laughing and sharing stories as they worked late into the night. Slowly, a bond of mutual respect and admiration began to form. Days filled with hard work and nights of deep confessions became their routine. Michael and Elena began sharing more than needles and threads. They shared their fears, dreams, and the emotional scars they had accumulated over the years. Michael discovered that Elena was not only talented, but also possessed an inner strength that deeply impressed him. For her part, Elena saw a vulnerable side of Michael, one he rarely let anyone else see. One afternoon, while adjusting a particularly intricate design, their hands met simultaneously over a piece of fabric. Both froze, their eyes locking. The silence that followed was charged with an unspoken intensity, the air between them thick with something neither dared name. "I'm sorry," Elena whispered, pulling her hand back gently, though her gaze remained fixed on his. "No," Michael said softly, his voice unusually tender. "I'm the one who should apologize." For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Both felt the undeniable connection growing between them, but didn't speak of it. Instead, they returned to their work, each more aware of the other than before. As the days turned into nights and the nights blurred into mornings, the mansion became a sanctuary of creativity and newfound companionship. Every piece they completed carried the weight of their shared effort, and Michael found himself looking forward to every moment spent with Elena, not just for her ideas, but for her presence. Late one evening, after hours of perfecting patterns, Michael suggested they take a break on the mansion's terrace. Under the glow of soft garden lights and the distant hum of crickets, they sat together, sipping coffee. "This place is incredible," Elena said, her voice tinged with awe as she looked out over the sprawling estate. "It's just a house," Michael replied, surprising himself with the statement. "It doesn't mean much when there's no one to share it with." Elena turned to him, surprised by his candidness. "But you have Victoria," she said cautiously. Isn't she? She let the sentence trail off, unsure how to finish. Michael hesitated before answering. Victoria and I are complicated. She fits into my world, but sometimes I wonder if she truly understands me, or if I even understand myself when I'm with her. His tone was quieter now, almost reflective. Elena didn't respond immediately. She simply looked at him, her expressive eyes holding a mix of empathy and curiosity. Michael found himself wanting to say more, but he stopped, unsure if he should. The following day brought unexpected tension. Victoria called to announce her arrival at the mansion, her voice sharp and impatient. "Michael, I'm coming over. We need to talk," she said, before hanging up abruptly. Michael turned to Elena, his face tight with worry. "Elena, I need you to stay out of sight. Victoria wouldn't understand what's happening here. Please, just trust me." Elena nodded, her heart sinking a little. She retreated to the sewing room and focused on their project, though her hands trembled as she cut the fabric. Victoria arrived in a flurry of impatience, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floors. "Michael, why have you been so unavailable, and why are you hiding out here instead of dealing with the mess at the office?" she demanded, her tone laced with suspicion. Michael offered a vague explanation, avoiding any mention of Elena. "I needed peace to focus on the new collection. There's been a lot going on." Victoria crossed her arms, her gaze narrowing. "A lot going on, huh? Are you sure there's nothing or no one else occupying your time?" Michael kept his composure. "You're being paranoid. Let's not make this into something it's not." Despite his efforts to deflect her questions, the tension between them lingered. After Victoria left, Michael found himself standing outside the sewing room door, hesitant to enter. When he finally did, he saw Elena sitting on the floor, surrounded by fabric and sketches, her face a mix of focus and sadness. "Elena," he began softly, "I'm sorry about earlier. Victoria is difficult." "You don't have to explain," Elena said, not looking up. "This is your life, and I'm just helping you for now." Michael frowned, unsettled by the finality in her tone. "You're more than that, Elena. You're not just helping. You've saved me." She looked up at him then, her eyes glistening with unspoken emotion. But before either of them could say more, they were interrupted by a call from the office. "We need to finish this collection," Michael said firmly, though his voice carried a different weight now. "Let's focus on what matters." They spent the next few days working tirelessly, side by side. As the deadline loomed closer, the energy between them grew more charged, their connection deepening in ways neither could ignore. The night before the big fashion event, as they put the final touches on a gown, Michael turned to Elena. "I couldn't have done this without you. Thank you, truly." Elena smiled, her heart aching at the thought of their time together coming to an end. "I'm just glad I could help." Little did either of them know the next day would bring revelations and decisions that would change their lives forever. The day of the grand fashion event arrived, and the energy backstage was electric. Models moved hurriedly, stylists adjusted every detail, and assistants dashed about ensuring perfection. Elena worked tirelessly behind the scenes, her hands steady, as she made last-minute adjustments to the gowns she and Michael had poured their hearts into. Michael, dressed in a sharp tailored suit, looked out at the growing audience from behind the curtain. The elite of Los Angeles had gathered, reporters snapping photos and murmuring in anticipation. Victoria clung to his arm, every inch the picture of a polished, supportive fiancé, though her icy gaze betrayed her irritation at his distracted demeanor. As the show began, Elena stayed behind the curtain, directing the models and ensuring every dress shone under the runway lights. One by one, the designs took the stage, each piece receiving gasps of admiration from the crowd. The elegance, innovation, and artistry were undeniable, and Michael felt a swelling pride, not for himself but for Elena. However, his triumph was momentarily overshadowed when the collection from a competing house, Regalia Designs, was unveiled. Michael's heart sank. The dresses on display were unmistakably from the stolen sketches. The betrayal hit like a punch to the gut, but he steeled himself, focusing on the task at hand. The final dress from their collection, a stunning evening gown in deep emerald silk, graced the runway, eliciting a standing ovation. The moment was bittersweet for Elena, who watched from the shadows, knowing this might be the closest she would ever get to recognition. As Michael stepped on stage to thank the audience, his speech took an unexpected turn. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice firm yet emotional, "tonight's collection represents more than just fashion. It represents collaboration, passion, and overcoming adversity. But most importantly, it represents the extraordinary talent of someone you haven't yet met." The room fell silent. Victoria's grip on her wineglass tightened, her face frozen in disbelief. Elena, still behind the curtain, froze too, her breath catching. "These designs," Michael continued, "were created by someone whose vision and artistry have changed everything for me. She is the true genius behind this collection. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Elena Martinez." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the audience. Elena hesitated, her heart pounding, but the sound of Michael's applause encouraged her to step forward. As she emerged onto the stage, the spotlight caught her, illuminating her nervous but radiant expression. The crowd erupted into applause. Michael extended his hand to her, guiding her to the center of the stage. "Elena, you deserve this moment," he said softly, his voice filled with sincerity. From the audience, Victoria's voice cut through the applause like a knife. "What is this madness, Michael? Who is this woman?" she demanded, storming onto the stage. Elena instinctively stepped back, but Michael stood his ground. "Victoria, enough," he said firmly. "Elena is the real talent behind tonight's success. And as for our relationship—" He hesitated, then took a deep breath. "It's over." Victoria's face twisted in fury. "You're ending things with me? For her? A nobody? An immigrant janitor?" Michael's expression darkened. "Elena is more than you could ever understand. She has talent, humility, and heart, things you wouldn't recognize if they were staring you in the face." Victoria's rage boiled over. "You'll regret this, Michael," she spat, before storming off the stage, leaving a trail of shocked whispers in her wake. Michael turned back to Elena, who looked overwhelmed but resolute. "I couldn't have done this without you," he said, his voice carrying over the hushed room. "And I don't want to go forward without you by my side." The crowd held its collective breath as Michael dropped to one knee. "Elena Martinez, will you take a chance on me? On us?" Tears streamed down Elena's face, her voice barely audible but clear. "Yes, Michael, I will." The room erupted into applause, the audience moved by the unexpected romance unfolding before them. As they embraced, Michael whispered, "You've changed everything, Elena." And she replied, her voice steady despite her tears, "You've given me a dream I never thought possible." Together they faced the crowd, their connection unmistakable, knowing that this was only the beginning of their journey. As the applause continued to thunder around them, Elena and Michael descended from the stage, hands clasped tightly together. Backstage, Elena could feel the gazes of everyone around her, some admiring, others envious, but none as warm and proud as Michael's. He held her hand with unwavering confidence, as if silently promising her that no matter what lay ahead, they would face it together. The night wasn't over, though. After the final applause died down, the press swarmed, hungry for interviews and answers. Michael was prepared to deflect most of their probing questions, but Elena, still overwhelmed by the spotlight, clung to his side. "Michael," one reporter called out, pushing a microphone toward him, "your collection tonight was a masterpiece, but the real surprise was your announcement about Ms. Martinez. Can you explain what led you to collaborate with her?" Michael smiled, glancing at Elena before replying. "It wasn't just a collaboration. It was a revelation. Elena Martinez isn't just a designer. She's a visionary. Her work speaks for itself, and I'm incredibly honored to have been a part of bringing her ideas to life." The cameras flashed, capturing every word, while reporters scribbled furiously. Elena blushed, unsure of how to respond to the praise, but Michael squeezed her hand reassuringly. Another journalist chimed in, "Elena, how does it feel to go from working behind the scenes to being celebrated in front of the world?" For a moment Elena hesitated, searching for the right words. Then she smiled softly. "It feels like a dream," she said, "but it's also a reminder that talent can come from anywhere, and that opportunities can change lives when people are willing to see potential in others." The sincerity in her voice captivated the crowd, and even the toughest critics in the room found themselves nodding in approval. As the media frenzy died down, Michael led Elena out of the venue to the waiting car. The ride back to his mansion was quieter, both of them reflecting on the whirlwind of events. Finally, Michael broke the silence. "I hope you know that none of this changes what you mean to me," he said, his tone serious. "You're not just a designer, Elena. You're someone who's made me see the world and myself differently." Elena smiled, her heart swelling. "And you've shown me that even in a world as competitive as this, kindness and respect can still exist." When they arrived at the mansion, they were greeted by the staff, who had been eagerly awaiting their return. The mood was celebratory, with champagne glasses ready and soft music playing in the background. But Elena, exhausted from the emotional roller coaster of the evening, quietly excused herself to her room. Later that night, as she sat by the window of her guest room, looking out at the vast garden illuminated by moonlight, there was a soft knock at the door. It was Michael. "Couldn't sleep," he admitted sheepishly, holding 2 steaming mugs of tea. "I thought you might need this." Elena smiled, motioning for him to sit beside her. They sipped their tea in companionable silence before Michael spoke again. "Elena, there's something I've been thinking about," he said, his voice hesitant. "The world now knows your name, but I don't want this to be just about recognition. I want you to have your own platform, your own space to create freely." "What do you mean?" she asked, tilting her head in curiosity. "I mean," he continued, "I want to launch a new brand with you, something that reflects your vision, your artistry. Not just another line under my name, but something that's entirely yours." Elena stared at him, stunned. "Michael, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he said with a grin. "Say you'll let the world see the brilliance I've already seen in you." Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. "Yes," she whispered, "but only if we do it together." Michael smiled, his heart swelling with pride and affection. "Together," he agreed. As the night wore on, the two of them sat side by side, dreaming up plans for the future, plans that no longer felt impossible. For the first time in years, both of them felt they were exactly where they were meant to be. The next morning, as the city buzzed with news of the previous night's event, Michael and Elena prepared to take their first steps into a new chapter, not just as partners in design, but as partners in life. The road ahead would be challenging, but they were ready to face it together, knowing they had found something far more valuable than fame or success. They had found each other. The mansion woke slowly the morning after the fashion event. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting golden beams across the rooms. Elena woke earlier than usual, her mind still buzzing from the triumph of the night before. Despite the success and the outpouring of support, doubts lingered in her heart. She wasn't accustomed to so much attention, and the weight of her new reality was daunting. Slipping into the quiet of the garden, she found solace among the flowers, her thoughts racing. Michael's offer to launch a brand with her felt like a dream, but she couldn't shake the weight of her insecurities. Could someone like her, who once sewed dresses in a tiny apartment, truly belong in the glittering world of high fashion? As she wandered the garden paths, Michael's voice broke the silence. "Couldn't find you inside," he said, smiling. "I figured you'd be here." Elena managed a small smile. "I needed some air. Last night feels unreal." Michael stood beside her, his hands in his pockets. "It was real, Elena, and it was amazing. You were amazing." Elena looked down at a rose, her fingers brushing its petals. "I'm not sure I'm ready for all of this. It's overwhelming." Michael nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I get it. But you don't have to do this alone. I meant what I said last night. This isn't just about fashion or business. It's about creating something meaningful together. I'll be with you every step of the way." Elena felt a lump form in her throat but managed to say softly, "Thank you." The two spent the rest of the morning walking through the gardens, sharing stories about their lives. Michael opened up about his father's tailoring shop and the joy he'd once felt in creating something from scratch. Elena shared memories of her mother and the sacrifices she'd made to provide for her. Over the next weeks, they worked tirelessly to prepare for the launch of their joint brand, which they decided to name Sterling and Martinez. The name felt symbolic, timeless yet personal. Meetings with fabric suppliers, interviews with the press, and endless fittings became their daily routine. One difficult day, after a frustrating negotiation with an investor, Elena retreated to the studio, overwhelmed. Michael found her sitting on the floor, staring blankly at a sketch pad. "What's wrong?" he asked gently. "I don't think I can do this," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I wanted to design dresses, not deal with contracts and budgets." Michael sat beside her. "Elena, you're stronger than you think. You've already achieved so much, and you're not alone. Don't let the pressure steal your passion. The world needs your vision." His words steadied her, and that night they stayed up late, sketching designs and laughing over silly ideas. Elena began to rediscover the joy that had brought her to fashion in the first place. The mansion buzzed with activity as the launch of Sterling and Martinez drew closer. Seamstresses worked tirelessly, models came for fittings, and the energy of creativity filled every corner. Michael and Elena found themselves caught up in the whirlwind, but they always made time for quiet moments together, growing closer with each passing day. One evening, as they reviewed the final designs, Michael turned to Elena. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you," he began. Elena looked at him curiously. "What is it?" Michael hesitated. "I've been thinking about us, about what we've built, not just in work, but in life. You've changed me, Elena. I don't want this, us, to be temporary." Her heart raced as he continued, "Will you move in here? Not just as a partner in design, but as my partner in life?" Elena's breath caught. She hadn't expected this, but the sincerity in his eyes made her feel safe. After a moment, she nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, Michael, I'll stay." The debut of Sterling and Martinez was held in New York, a glamorous event attended by industry leaders and celebrities. Each design dazzled the audience, earning gasps of admiration and thunderous applause. By the end of the night, the brand had cemented its place in the fashion world. Backstage, Elena and Michael stood together, watching the models take their final walk. The energy in the room was electric, but all Elena could think about was the man beside her. "You did it," Michael whispered, his hand brushing against hers. "We did it," she corrected, smiling. Later that night, as they sat on the mansion's terrace, looking out at the city lights, Michael took Elena's hand. "This is just the beginning," he said softly. "And I can't wait to see where it takes us," she replied. Together they faced the future with hope, knowing that their partnership, built on trust, respect, and love, would carry them through whatever challenges lay ahead.